Peace in YouTube. What's up, everybody? So you guys got less than 80 days until the SHSAT. Ah! Right? All right. I'm Greg from Greg's Tutoring at NYC at gmail.com here. If you guys want to contact me, don't hesitate to do so. This is the time where everybody's really hunkered down and trying to figure stuff out. Got the pandemic on top of it. Nobody knows if school's opening. The SHSAT day itself might even be in question. Who knows? Although I'm getting a few emails about that. The Department of Education is saying that the SHSAT is still on. So we have to go with what they say. Even if it's postponed or whatever, we'll just have to adapt to it. A lot of families are confused and upset, but so far right now the SHSAT is on. So let's do this. So I came across some regents from 1866 and onward. So what we're going to do is go over some of those problems. It's kind of interesting. So if you read the screen right now, that's part of the front of it, and it's explaining some stuff. It's really kind of funny here. How some of the issues are still the same and some are not. How a salary is going to be paid. What's the legislature doing about school? What about state exams? It's even, what the questions from the last exam and how many people passed it, and it's funny. So as we look at some of these questions, it's both comical in a way, but also it turns out that some of the questions are actually still apropos, completely apropos. Some of them might be less than the SHSAT actually requires. So in some ways, this is maybe a grade 8 review, but some are not. Some are tricky-ish, and some are whatever. And this was par for the course here. And if you look at it, you'll notice like, oh my God, we're actually getting probably taught more stuff than they were at the time. And if you also look at it, many of the examples seem to have like an accounting kind of feel to them, as if some of it was written for kids who were going to graduate and then become accountants and stuff like that. If you remember, at the time, there were more factory jobs, and if you become a CPA or work in a Wall Street company or something, you would have to do bookkeeping and kind of things like that too. All right, so why don't we just jump into here? If anybody wants to read that, and it's kind of hard to read, even for me. So it's not your screens, but it's kind of funny what's going on here, and about what this person is saying. So this person conglomerated a whole bunch of these past regents and put them into a book in the 1860s. And then they did another one about 10 years later, because they found after like 100 of these they did or something, or whatever the heck they had, that there was a consistency. And then they noticed, oh my God, the regents changed how they do this. And by the way, there's other sections of this book, like this we're going to cover arithmetic. Let me bring you to a black and white page of it. So you have the regents questions, just like we try to get now, the SHSAT questions, the regents questions, et cetera, et cetera. There is a difference in the SHSAT, which is we have the handbooks, which is never the actual test. So the SHSAT that you take on test day, no versions of that ever gets released, at least formally. And I've scoured the internet, and I can't find an actual legit copy that ever got out in the wild. There probably is somewhere, but I'm telling you, I looked a real long time. I even put out things asking people to send it to me. I was even willing to pay for it at one point. But at this point, I don't know if I would pay for it anymore, but I would still be curious to see what it looks like. So let me just make sure we're still live. Making sure my microphone is on, yes. Make sure we're live, yes. All right, I see a few people out there. Hello. Please say hi, please ask questions. So some of these are going to be simpler than SHSAT questions. Some are going to be equal to it, and some, I hope we cover some that are harder. I just tried to look at some. I actually woke up, my eyes are blurry, so I'm hoping my eyes get in tune to this. On that note, remember I'm slightly dyslexic and slightly dysgraphia. So if I write a number or something wrong, somebody call me out on it. Otherwise, just sit back and enjoy. All right, so let me so what I'm going to do is bring my camera up here too. One second. so we can work out some problems. Some of the problems I'm not going to work out fully, just set them up. It's not letting me move the camera to the top. All right, there we go. So first of all, you know there's differences of fonts and so on or whatever, and since this is you're like, I had to do this in grade 5 or something on my grade 5 state test, something like question number 1. So we're not going to cover that. That's just easy. That's just mapping words to numbers and getting the standard form of numbers and things like that or whatever. And again, it's kind of pushing that if you're an accountant, seeing something and something, you would do that. Two is fairly simple. I think the catch with 2 is that you shouldn't do 7 3/4 plus 7 5/8, and then 4 and 2 3/4, and then subtract the 2. If you notice, there's the 3 3/4 and the 2 3/4. So in other words, if you had, what they're asking you to do is A plus B minus C plus D, but it's like that. So you can do A and C together and B and D together, and then do it that way. So basically, you get A plus B minus C minus D, right? So if you're able to do A minus C and then B minus D, your math will be simpler. So if you do 3 3/4 minus 2 3/4, you get 1. And if you have 7 5/8 minus 4, you get 3 5/8. So you have 3 5/8 plus 1 5/8. Should be 4 5/8. I can't read the answer sheet, but it says 4 and something. So again, they have things about, they're worrying about stuff like this. So 4 could possibly be a SHSAT question, but it'll be kind of a weak one, where you're just trying to find what you have: a divisor, a quotient, and a remainder. And what is the dividend? Most of you don't. You were probably officially taught these, but you were taught this so quickly that it's not important. Probably back then it was more important, especially as I said. There's other sections to this, to the regions in this book here. They have a spelling section, a geography section, and a grammar section. So there used to be a spelling regions in New York State. Okay, so what we're just trying to find is that extra number 4. So I'm not going to cover that. 5 gets confusing because I know BU means bushel, but I don't know what PK means. I'd have to Google that, and then figure out how to do that. So we're going to skip that. That doesn't help us. 6 is asking you about basically rules. Okay, so they're worrying about not only how to do stuff, but what you call it. So you would have had to provide a written answer. Again, there was probably less kids in high school at the time in New York City, and also less kids actually taking the Regents at that point. Because even if you got into high school, there was less of a graduation rate. It's only now that we have 70% and so on, which is still not a good number. Or it's actually hit, it may have hit 80 in some schools and so on. But so I don't know what the what the graduation rate was at the time. I'm going to guess 35%. Just I'm picking a number out of my hat. 7. Don't know what they're talking about, dudes. I guess there was a certain grammage or something that you were supposed to know. Just like we know facts today, like you should know what a mile is, or this 3 feet to a yard. Well, there must be something here about that. Okay, 8 you should be able to answer. In the meantime, while you're looking at 8, I'm going to see that we're still live. So we still have a few people out there being quiet. That's all right. So what is the only even prime number? Well, you got to know what your prime numbers are. It's the first one, 2, because it's number divisible by itself. So it can't be any other number because it would be 2 and something, and that means has other factors. So the only prime number that has itself and 1, which is 2, 1 and 2, is 2. Okay, 9. Okay, 9 is a SHSAT question. It's normally a little more complicated on the SHSAT. But what I'll do is, what we're going to have is, just put position this a little better. I'm just going to use M here. 8 million minutes. So what we need to do is convert and eventually get to weeks somehow. So what we need to do is put a whole bunch of conversions along the side of here. So what you want to do is not only cancel out numbers when you do kind of things like this, you want to cancel out units as well. So if we put minutes at the bottom here, so 60 minutes, right, is 1 hour. And then we want to go and cancel through again. So this would cancel. And then we have, right, 24 hours is 1 day. So this would cancel, right? And then we have 7 days is 1 week. So that cancels. And if you notice, all the units in the top are 1 so far. Right? So if we do that, we should have the number of weeks basically as a decimal. So if I take, where's my calculator on my computer? If I take this here, divide by 60, divide by 24, divide by 7. I get 850.04 from that number. Okay, here's the interesting part of this. What question is that? Number 9? Here's their answer. 850 weeks, 7 hours and 36 minutes. So they expected somebody to calculate that. So if that was literally the question, because this is how many weeks. So technically that we're normally told what form, like keep it as a fraction, keep it as a decimal. You don't need to fold in pi or something like that. So in their case, they would have to have known that already. So how would we get that out of there? So what we would basically do is figure out what this fraction was and subtract it off the original number. And then work just on the day part and then work on the minute part. All right? So it's a little more involved problem than it looks, but the general technique is to make ratios of whatever the conversions are and then try to cancel out the units and then just keep going along. Because at the end, all we had 1s in the top, and we ended up with 60 times 24 times 7 at the bottom, divided into the original number. Okay, so it's kind of cute that way. All right, let me get my screen back here. So again, like 12 and 13, they want to know rules. 14, they want an explanation and so on. I don't know how much these were worth. So I believe, if I'm looking at this right, question 14, I believe, because this says from 10 to 12. So I don't know if there was a part 2, because this just goes on to like question 1,000. So I think the person retyped all the questions in. So I don't know if there's a part 2 where you took lunch and then you came back and did the rest of them, okay, or what. So 15 is the same. I don't know what QRSs are. I would have to look that up, or QR. There was also, again, 16 is a classic example here. It's some sort of bookkeeping thing that the person is. I don't know. It says per M. I don't know if that's per million, per thousand, per meter. I guess it's per meter now that I'm looking at it, because this talks about feet aboard. So you'd have to add that up somehow. I'm not going to try that because we don't know the units. Okay, 17. What is the length of the side of a cubical box containing 389.017 solid inches? This technique's to take the cube roots of large numbers. The SHSAT normally doesn't ask this kind of a question. At best, it might say, what's the cube root of 125? And if you know your perfect squares, and in some cases you should really memorize your perfect cubes for some of the small numbers. Again, I say this in a lot of streams. Everybody should know 1 times 1 to 20 times 20. Okay? Your perfect squares come up often. You should know 15 times 15, 16 times 16, 17 times 17, 18 times 18, 19 times 19. They come up on a lot of standardized testing examples. In the SAT, on the state test, even stuff like 17 times 3, 17 times 4 is 17 times 5, 17 times 2, 18 times 2, 3, 4, 5, 19 times 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the reverse. So you should know something like 17 times 3 is 51. So if you get an answer like 51 and it's looking for factors, most kids think 51 is a prime number. It's 17 times 3, because you can do 30 plus 20 and get 51. So there's a bunch of numbers that come up often like that. Or some kids, because it's test day, you start freaking out. So you want to have these memorized, including fractions like an eighth. You know, everybody knows a half is 0.5 and stuff, but do you know what 1/8 is? Or 1/16, which is half of that? Or 1/32, which is half of that? Okay, do you know what 1/9 is? Do you know what 1/7 is? Those are handy things you should look at, and they don't require really deep sessions. And going back to what I was really saying about knowing from 20 to 20, 20 to 20 is easy. And this is true of the whole multiplication table. Most of you know most of it. There's probably 5 or 6 only that you really have to sit down and memorize. Okay, like me personally, 9 times 7, I think is annoying. So it's not that I don't know it, but there's 100 of them, and most of them, you know, just like the arithmetic table, 1 to 9 plus 1 to 9, or double-digit numbers, 11 to 99 plus some number 11 to 99. Well, most of you know how to do that. It's just a matter of practice. So the number of multiplications I just mentioned, from the perfect squares and the extra multiplications that you don't know or can't do, is actually pretty tiny. It's less than 10. So really all I'm telling you to do is memorize 10 things. And the SHSAT is not about memorizing stuff, but you best do that, because for the rest, as you guys take, if you get into a specialized high school, even if you don't, as you take AP courses and all this other kind of stuff like that, you want to be fluid in this kind of stuff. You want to be mathematically fluid. Absolutely, you must be. Okay? So this is the kind of stuff like that. So what else? Let's see what else we got here. So there's techniques to get the cube root of stuff. I'm not going to do that here. If somebody's really interested, I could do a YouTube about that. Email me. My email's at the bottom. I'm Greg's Tutoring, NYC at gmail.com. Invoke 5/8 to 7 power. Okay, involve. I'm not sure if that's a technical word at the time, but look, I said 5/8 times 5/8 times 5/8 times 5/8. Okay, so you're getting weird numbers. You get 5 times 5 times 5, 5, 5, 5, right? So you're going to start getting giant numbers. The SHSAT normally avoids ugly numbers, okay, and that's the problem with something like number 20. There are techniques to solve 20, but that's moving into esoterica, right? This is esoteric to be able to do that. Again, if somebody wants me to solve this, I can do that, but I don't see the point of that here. 21, I don't know what a CWT is, so I'm going to avoid that. Okay, 22 is an interesting one. A person owned 5/8 of a mine and sold 3/4 of his interest for $17.10. What is the value of the entire mine? So what this is telling us is that they sold this. So 3/4 of 5/8 of x equals 1710. All right. So if we map it, that's 3/4 times 5/8 x equals 1710. And if we have a calculator, you could just go and do that. Otherwise, what we're going to do is we can multiply these and leave them 7, 8, 9. This is divisible by 3, because this adds up to 8. So you should know your divisibility rules. So I'm going to keep these as it is. So to get rid of this, I might need to multiply it by 8/5. And to get rid of that, I need to multiply it by 4/3. Okay, so this is 1710. So I'm going to divide that by 3 and get 570. And 570 is divisible by 5. So get 114. So what we're going to basically get is 1710 times 8 times 14, I believe, if I did that right. Where's my camera? So you're just going to multiply those, and you should be able to get your answer from that. Okay, 23 is really weird, that they actually are supposed to know the difference between the latitudes and longitudes. Most kids today are taught what latitude and longitude is, and they're supposed to memorize it. And really the extent that most kids know it is, some kids know which way goes this way and this way goes this way. And that's about it. If I'm not mistaken, there's some number, and I know I was taught this, to tell when you're going into the next time zone. And time zones change over the years, so this may not even be accurate. It may have been every 10 degrees, maps into an hour, or 15 degrees or something like that. So I really don't know. 24 CWTs, which might mean carat. I'm really not sure again. In fact, that might even be the same question. So here we have another one, which is now a different date. So it's exam 2. So I guess it was a morning session and an afternoon session. So they just want to do number 25. This is something you did maybe in 3rd and 4th grade sometimes, but never a number this large. They would really only make you do it maybe at most of the 100,000 case. Okay, 26 is just making sure you can do multi-digit multiplication. And by the way, the funny thing about 26 is, even though it would never be a SHSAT question, or an ISEE question, or an SSAT question, or a BCA question, or a TACHS question, or even an SAT question, this is actually a question that most kids screw up. The number of kids who do multi-digit multiplications and get it wrong is actually pretty high. And the number of kids who do multi-digit subtractions and get that wrong is also actually pretty high. And guys, you have to master this stuff. Not only is it sloppy and you're making silly errors, but you're losing points over something that's so easy. Okay, 27, not exactly sure what they're talking about here, but I know I've seen this term a long time ago. It's just problems I haven't done in so long. So 28. These days, on a state test, you're given a reference sheet. The SHSAT, you can't use a calculator, and you can't use a reference sheet. So in addition to all the other magic numbers I mentioned before, like knowing the perfect squares, knowing some of the fractions, knowing some of the teens times low numbers, like 17 times 3, you should also know that there's 5,280 miles, feet, in a mile. And there's also some kids who don't know 3 feet is in a yard. Guys, you can't do that. I can't tell you how many smart kids I work with when they come to a question about, by the way, normally the SHSAT doesn't require you to know it's 5280. But you should know that 3 feet are in a yard. I mean, come on. All right? But the SHSAT technically is able to give you a question involving, it could give you 28. Okay, so all we're going to basically do here is divide it by 2.5, right? So that's just simple math. They want to have an explanation here. So this one's interesting. And by the way, this comes up in enough tests, and it can come up on the SHSAT in different forms. It definitely comes up harder, in a harder form, on the Hunter College High School test. So we have 3/8 of means multiplication, of 2/3, of means multiplication, of 1/4, of a half. So the way to do this is not to multiply the numerators and then multiply the denominators. So the numerator would be 6, and then the denominator would be 64 times 3 is 280. Is that 192? I believe. Okay, the way to do it is to cancel this. This 2 cancels that. Okay. And this 3 cancels that. So we end up with 1 over 32. And if we match this, 6 goes into here 3 times with 1 left over, and 6 goes into the 2 twice. So the answer would be 1/32. And by the way, what's funny about this, what is this question number 30, is how they write some of this too. And I'm not sure of the etymology of this, but look how they have that. They put like a 1-32. Again, this might be some sort of accounting terms. I don't really recall ever having seen anything like this. But this is the same as 1 divided by 32. The answer we just got a minute ago. So it's really interesting how some of this is done and set up at the time. But you should be able to do something like number 30. Again, the SHSAT, the Hunter College High School test literally gives this example. And what they might do instead is they'll throw a division in here, which means you need to flip you need to get the reciprocal of that fraction at the time. And there's hairy numbers so that if you do it by doing the numerators and the denominators, it gets super, I was not even sure this was 192 when I just did it on my head. And by the way, that's another rule of thumb. Try to avoid doing mental math on the SHSAT unless it's easy peasy stuff. If it's 2 times 2, there's no point doing that on paper, right? And what you want to do, by the way, if you do some easy computations, is do it 2 ways, okay? Often there's a whole bunch of techniques involved in improving your mathematical savvy, and you ways to double check, and you ways to ensure that you got the right number, okay? And by the way, in a lot of these examples, like 30, we can't feed 1/32 back into this. There's no way to take 1/32 and feed it back into the question, because it just means recomputing it, okay? Okay, 32 is simple peasy. You need to get a common denominator there. So 32 is like the example I gave it. So it says add 3 2/3 to, and then this weird thing. So that means 4 21/38. So I believe the common denominator with 38 times 3, which is 90, plus 24, so that's 114, I believe. And then you would just make the 2/3 have that same denominator, and you would get 7 or 8 something, right? I'm just rounding here. Same for 34. That's reduced 1350 divided by 8836. There might be a division by rule here. If you know, like they're both divided by 4, like the denominator is definitely divisible by 4, but the numerator has a 5 in it, so it's not divisible by 4. In fact, the numerator is only divisible by 5. So to convert this to a decimal, you actually need to do the division. There's some examples where you could maybe get down to where like you get 1/5, which we know is 0.2 or something like that. So that's not the case. Multiply these two English versions. Same here, divide. You're not going to see this on the SHSAT. You might have to do that as an interim solution as you're working out your problem to a word problem, but otherwise it's not the case. Same for something like 37. I learned antecedent and consequent. I don't think they teach that at all anymore. In fact, I believe I learned that in Brooklyn Tech. So I believe it's the first number in the ratio, basically the numerator, the 9. Wait, some of this is cut off here. Okay, 90. So what they want you to do is figure that out. The ratio is 9, then the consequent is probably 10 if I remember this correct. Whereas 90 is to 10, or 90 divided by 10 is 9. I believe that's the way it works. I haven't seen these terms in 40 years. Okay, the same for 38. This is basically actually a proportion. So it's basically saying, and you guys don't see it in this form anymore. 4 is to, I'm going to use X instead of the question mark. The double thing means basically as 9 is to 16. Okay, and you're going to get some freakoid number because you do the cross product. You're going to get 16 times 4 over 9 equals X. You're going to get 64. You're going to get, you're going to get 64. You're going to get 7 1/4. Is that right? 38. Sorry, 7 1/9. Right. So if we look at, and they have it in that weird form again, $7 and 1/9, like that. Again, I might look up to see why there's those two forms. So 56 pounds of butter costs $15.68. What will 0.078 of a ton cost? And by the way, this will almost never come up. But do you know that 2,000 pounds is a ton? Again, I don't think kids really have to given math involving that anymore. So, okay, 40 is a SHSAT question. Kind of right out there. Let me just double check that we're still live. So my machine is giving me a warning. No, we seem live. So what do we want to do here? 96 horses eat 192 tons of hay in one winter. How many tons will 150 horses eat in 6 winters? So if 96 horses eat 192 tons of hay in one winter, 192 divided by 96 is 2. That means one horse eats 2 tons of hay in a winter. So if there's 150 horses, then that's 300 tons times 6 is 1,800. What's the end of the 40? Yep, 1,800 tons. Okay, so in the SHSAT, it's normally more complicated. I think there's some examples showing that that it is. 41 is using simple interest, not compounded interest. So when you run into a SHSAT example, it's normally going to be more involved in this. But what they're asking is, what is the rate percent? So they're using ugly numbers here. The SHSAT's normally going to have easier numbers. So basically what we need to do, well, if it was 1 year, it would just be the difference, and then from there we could do the division to figure out what the rate is. So basically we're going to have new minus old over old, right? That's our rate of change kind of thing. And in this case, I think we're going to take that answer and multiply it by 1.4. Let me do that on my screen. You guys won't see this. I have a calculator on the screen. So if I do 336.42 minus 311.5, nope, I just messed that up. Let me clear this. 336.42 minus, no, it's freaking out at me. Come on, what's going on, guys? 336.42 minus 311.5 equals. So we get a difference of 2492 divided by 311.5 equals, and I get 0.08. That's if it was a yearly thing. So it's 4 months, so it's 1/3. So what I'm going to do is multiply that by 1.25. No, sorry, divide that. What did I just get a second ago? 0.08 divided by 1.25. And I get somewhere a 6% rate, the 6 point something percent rate. So 41, yeah, it says 6% rate. So there we go. With a slight remainder to it. And I guess, and they have a lot of these kind of things about bank rate interests. So again, it seems very tied into doing accounting or something like that. There's a whole bunch of similar ones relating to that. And when a bank note is due, and they flip it around. 44, how much will it cost to carpet a parlor 18 feet square with carpeting 3/4 wide at $1.50 per yard? This actually might be a candidate for the SHSAT. So what we have to basically do is, we have a parlor 18 feet square. So let's just assume that it actually is a square, and somehow so that's this area. but the carpet is 3/4 yards wide, right? So if you have 18 square feet, what we need to do, I think, is accommodate that it was multiplied. So this is not divisible by 3, and we get 6 by 6, because that's 36. So we can end up with 3 by 3 yards. I'm talking about here. In other words, to get 9 feet, and then we're going to divide that by 3/4 and multiply it by $1.50. So again, that's ugliest math. I'm not going to do that. Again, what's the difference between 2 places in 2 hours and 18 minutes? Interesting. 33 is 2 3/4% of what number? So that's just 2 3/4 x equals 33, and then doing the algebra. I don't know how big an acre is, and we're normally not required to do that. In fact, I used to know what it was. If I sat here for 5 minutes, I could probably pull it out of my brain. Again, another banknote thing. Okay, 50 is interesting because I solved that, and this is actually not a PEMDAS problem. In fact, that's weird because I wasn't sure what was going on here. These are actually minus signs. I wasn't sure if they were divisions. They just literally did it left to right because what they're using is the word plus. They're not using the word plus as if it was a plus operator. So basically, this whole thing has to go from left to right. So they're actually going to do 102 minus 19. Whatever that happens to be, they're going to multiply that by 17, which is not the way we do that. Again, they have a bunch of just whacked out numbers. They're just going to waste your time and force you to add these. But again, if you were going to graduate and try and account the thing, there was another page that I didn't show you guys. It mentioned like if you got a passing score in this, you got accepted into Cornell. And now Cornell would just laugh at this if you walked in and showed up this. So because some of these are across the board. All right, 53. Let's see, what do we have here? If 2 persons start from the same place and travel in the same direction, one 7 and the other 11 miles per hour at the rate of 9 hours per day, how far apart will they be at the end of the 17th day? Yeah, if they're 4 miles apart from each other per hour, times 9 times 17. So basically you have 36 times 17. And the answer ends up being 612 miles. So I'm not going to compute that. Let's see. I don't know what a league is. I'm not sure how big a bushel is. Again, they have different forms here. So it's really just a common denominator problem. Same for 58. Same for 60. So they're making sure people can do basic stuff because, like I said, if you're going to be doing accounting or work at a bank or Wall Street or whatever it happens to be, you can't screw numbers up. And you got to remember, they didn't have calculators, right? They couldn't even take a calculator. They had no choice. I'm not sure if slide rules were invented yet. They could have been, but slide rule is just this thing that looked like a ruler, and there was a center part that came out based on stuff you could do certain things, including logarithms and so on. If you had a logarithm table and other things, you could do other stuff. But basic multiplication, it was kind of like using an abacus. It doesn't mean it's impossible. There's still people using abacuses because however it works, and I don't know how it works, is apparently reasonable to do. Okay, 63 is the more involved one that I was thinking of before when it gave that horse example. So if 9 men cut 150 acres of grass in 18 days, how many will do the same work in 27 days? So that's kind of a SHSAT question. All right, so what you want to do is figure out your ratios. If 9 men cut 150 acres of grass in 18 days, so what you can do is multiply them out, and how many will do the same work in 27 days? 64 is similar. If 500 copies of a book contained 210 pages, require 12 reams of paper, how much will 1,200 copies of a book of 280 require? So this one could be a SHSAT question. So what do we have here? 500. So we have 500 times 210 over 12 equals pages per ream. And then what we need to do is take for the other one 1,200 times 280 divided by pages per ream. So basically it will be the flip of this. So it'll be times 12 over 500 times 210. And there's probably a whole bunch of stuff that can cancel out here. All right? We get the final number, which is, it says 38 and 2/5. Okay, so as you can see, these aren't quite SHSAT problems, and some are tricky. Same for something like 66, it's the same problem again. We get the simple interest. When they just say interest, think about simple interest. So you're going to get 7%, you're going to get 14 times 3, and then you're going to get 7% of 10/12. At least that's the way I would do it. I'm not sure if that's the accurate way to do it. There may have been some more, because some months only have 28 days, some 31. So I'm just going with something like 10/12 to get that. Okay, 67 is interesting. All right, it's probably time for me to end this. Everybody have a great day, and I'll resume this. This looks a little fun. What I'm going to try to do is find some more involved problems, and this is just the cursory kind of level of stuff. It's a great grade 8 review, certainly if you're taking the state test, and eventually some stuff like the integrated algebra or reasons. Remember, this is not focused on anything except for arithmetic. All right? Peace out, people.